Good morning everyone, my name is John Raymond. Welcome to this webinar on the issue of phishing. You may or may not be aware that recent research from the Federation of Small Businesses says that 42% of its members have been a recent victim of cybercrime in the last 12 months, and that the average cost of these to those businesses was around £4,000. The reported incidents of phishing continue to escalate, not just in the press, but also directly into us from our customers. So we're going to take a few minutes to look at why phishing has become the most common form of delivery of malicious content, and begin to learn a little bit about what we can do to protect our businesses. Just a bit of housekeeping. We'll keep all attendees muted during the presentation. If you want to ask questions, please do so via the chat panel to the host. So what does phishing look like? What's the nature of the problem? And what can we do as businesses to stay one step ahead of the criminals and the popular mechanisms of the attacks that we're seeing? Obviously, phishing is a term that many of us are now familiar with. It's the practice of sending out fraudulent emails in order to trick people into divulging information such as passwords or allowing access to data, which is often then locked and used to extort money or payment for the data's release. It's worth us reminding ourselves a little bit of the power that email now has. Here's Mr. Neil Moore. He'll act as a bit of an icebreaker for us. You may or may not have heard of him. He walked away from Wandsworth Prison earlier this year before finishing his sentence. A smartphone had been smuggled into him in prison, and he went about setting up a fake Southwark Crown Court website. He then sent an email to his jailers saying, "Please release Mr. Moore, and for validation click on this link, which will verify you can let him go." Anyway, the admin staff clicked on the link, saw it looked legitimate, and he was released from jail. 2 days later, his lawyer arrived, inquired where Mr. Moore was, only to be told that they'd let him go, and asked why. They said they followed instructions. The staff there hadn't even noticed that Mr. Moore wasn't that good at spelling and had managed to misspell Southwark on his website. But still, thanks to social engineering, he'd managed to set himself free. The original reason that he was in prison was because he'd managed to rob several businesses of nearly £1.9 million. This is just one example, but these threats are very real. And we're sat here today in Worcester, and as we're aware, two small businesses, one was been done for £11,000 and one done for £8,000 pretty recently, purely through the clever phishing campaigns coming into their business. So really, I suppose the key message is, what can we do about it? We all rely heavily on technology, and of course our business here is security. Firewalls, antivirus and security products, but when it comes down to it, human error is going to be the way forward for these attackers to get into our systems. They're already aware of it, and of course they're already playing on it. So ultimately what we end up looking at is security training, because security awareness of your staff becomes critical for the security of your business. We typically run this session in front of an audience, and at this point in the session we like to ask just who has a training program in place for their staff and members coming in. We still continue to be surprised about the number of hands that don't go up. And really, I'm afraid it's a popular soapbox for us at the moment. Working in the IT industry, we offer you a great range of products and services, all with the aim of making your network secure, but really it's down to the individuals in your company to keep your business safe. Let's face it, if I was a blue-collar worker and my job required me to climb ladders, I couldn't possibly have climbed a ladder without taking the relevant training. That would be Security 101 on how to climb ladders. The Health and Safety Executive is celebrating 40 years within the UK, and they've plenty of material on how to climb ladders successfully. Should I fall off, having not been trained, then woe betide the people involved in my training, and good luck to them in the industrial tribunal that I'm taking them to. Unfortunately, Security 101 doesn't exist for emails. We look for it, it's not there. So what can we do? Well, we rely on our staff to recognise what spam looks like, what malicious email looks like, and what form it takes. And I think largely we've become quite good at identifying simple spam. We can recognise whether it's unsolicited or solicited, and manage to ignore most marketing emails that come round inviting us to purchase products. We're pretty familiar with the classic definition of the word spam. We start to move into these types of email. I think most of us would recognise this as a spam email. We've all seen them: purchasing land in Florida, having an inheritance, winning a large sum of money. If I give up my banking details, I can share in 50% of the winnings. They become quite obvious. We get these types. So I think I've won £1 billion and hand in my notice at work, and everything seems great. But I take a closer look and realise that we've actually won £1 billion British pounds sterlings. Why the spell checker eludes the hacker, we don't know. We're seeing an awful lot of PDF attachments coming through. Here's the order you were expecting. Please find attached my invoice, etc. PDFs, Excel and Word documents that are all capable of carrying active content, and once the person's opened them, the active content is executed, and we're reliant at that point on having the correct antivirus signatures in place. Now we come to the most popular malware we're seeing. 70% of all CryptoLocker installations have been pushed out via email. And as a business, if you want to call it that, the CTA have linked it back to Eastern Europe, and it's reckoned that this single ransomware has netted around $100 million throughout its duration. Don't know if any of you saw this recent piece in the news about a Glasgow hairdresser who's been held to ransom and was encouraged to pay £700 at the time in order to unlock his files. Incidentally, the FBI actually do recommend that you pay the ransom if you want to stand a chance of getting your data back. Unfortunately, in this case, the key that was delivered in order to release the information was invalid, so the victim had not only lost all of his data, but he'd also lost £700. So I guess ultimately, if nothing else comes out of it, keep good backups. Improve user awareness in case of this kind of attack. I think phishing's getting a bit smarter out there. A recent attack came into a local business. It was sent to the managing director. He sort of stopped and looked at it and had a good poke around. It started to look quite clever now. Looking at the email, we detect unauthorized login attempts. We've detected them in the past, we've detected them in the present. It's American language, so it's not quite how we'd word it, but it looks fairly reasonable. Just decided to spin this up in a virtual environment and see just exactly what the attack looked like. So while there was no malware, there was nothing nasty coming down. This was quite clearly attempting to get you to score an own goal by encouraging you to fill in your personal security. You may have spotted the giveaway. If we look at the credit card information, it becomes fairly obvious that credit cards don't have sort codes. It's the only thing that lets this one down pretty much. Everything else font-wise looks pretty standard, and the whole feel for those who do use Apple devices, I think you'll agree, is a reasonable attempt. Many of us have Google accounts, and we were recently asked to agree to Google's new terms and conditions. This email looks fairly reasonable, except for of course the spelling mistakes. Tried to contact the recipient on 3 previous occasions. Well, I know that they haven't, so we can begin to unpick this one. But if you were in a hurry, then I imagine it's a trap that may catch quite a few. Then we start to get into the really nasty stuff. I suppose we could call it spear phishing, getting the content to look a lot more localized. We actually were involved recently in a mock phishing campaign in East Anglia and encouraged people to land on a landing page to see if we could get their mobile phone numbers to SMS them a voucher by which they'd be able to enjoy a free sample selection of award-winning sausages. It netted quite a few people coming through, and again, as I begin to show you some more of these creations, think about who in your organisation would be likely to click on them. Depending on the size of your company, I'm sure you can think of someone. This one, the Mock England rugby tickets, didn't run quite for as long as we were hoping for, unfortunately, but we managed to get quite a bit of people out of it. Same kind of trap, same deliverables. And of course this one is netting quite nice results at the moment, particularly at this time of year before Christmas. You're expecting a parcel, it's pretty obvious. If you were wise, just a few bits. We haven't quite matched the Yodel colours in green, but if you wanted to check that telephone number, you'd find that it does actually exist. Yodel only charge 1p a minute, but I figured that 10p a minute and you'd be more likely to click on the link than use the phone. So again, at speed, you're expecting a Christmas present, it's something you'd like to have. We're fairly confident we'd get quite a few people of your team if we were to send this one out to them. It gets worse than that, I suppose. We all leave a social footprint on the internet. It's all a LinkedIn page for all of our companies, and it's easy to get the contact details and compose an email that would appear quite genuine. So what can we do about these problems? What can be done to stay one step ahead? As we've established, if you have your security appliances and subscriptions in place, the weakest link in your network is likely to be your staff, with the majority of network security breaches coming from user error. Are your staff divulging information or allowing criminals access to data as they masquerade as known contacts? We'd like to introduce a new phishing awareness reporting and training system, KnowBe. The system tests and trains your staff to identify and stop attempts to steal your data. So how does it work? Here we've mocked up a template on the KnowBe system, concocting an email that people may well be willing to open. So let's say Pete was sending out budget salaries for the next year in an Excel document. Through the phishing templates available with the system, we're able to entirely personalise the communication by using first name and last name, along with other details. We can dupe people into believing that the email was meant for them. We can create a landing page, something like this Salesforce login, where we're attempting to find out someone's password. Just as a reassurance, although the objective would be to lure your users through to this page, if someone did complete their password, the only record we would see would be the number of characters they entered. Most companies use the same password for many activities. For example, if you were using Salesforce as your company's CRM, there's a strong chance that your password would be the same for your admin system to get onto your domain. So again, no record is kept, but we can just record who clicked it. Now we get to the larger fraud that's going on. Right now, we mentioned it in our opening piece, there's increasing numbers of companies that are being caught out, and we're aware of a couple of businesses in this country that have been caught out by CEO fraud. Where CryptoWall has netted around £300 million, the FBI reckon that CEO fraud is worth about £3 billion a year. We need to start paying attention to and bringing our staff, managers and directors and ourselves up to date with the tricks and the traps that the hackers are using. And of course, this isn't just limited to email. There are so many opportunities to click when we're on the internet. Bit of training here for you. Just because we click to exit or click no thanks, that doesn't mean that we can be absolutely sure it's safe. Think about the act of actually exiting or clicking on no thanks. The dialog box may disappear, but what's been installed? So are we able to rely on our staff's common sense in order to be able to resolve these issues? We don't think so. I'm reminded of a white paper written by Dunning-Kruger back in 1999. Marcus MacArthur Wheeler was a bank robber who'd covered his face with lemon juice under the mistaken belief that he wouldn't be picked up by surveillance cameras. He'd tested his theory with Polaroid cameras earlier and realised that if he covered his face in lemon juice, his picture didn't come out. He believed it was because his face was covered in lemon juice of course being used in invisible ink, thus making his face invisible to cameras. The police were led to the conclusion that either the film was old and he didn't properly develop it, or he was pointing the camera in the wrong direction, or maybe he had lemon juice in his eye when he was viewing the image. Needless to say, he was caught, but his story inspired the Dunning-Kruger paper, which was all about incompetence or competence in particular skills. So where do the incompetent not realise that they're incompetent when using Outlook, when using the internet? They go ahead and use it in the full mistaken belief that they know what they're doing. They haven't been trained. Conversely, those of us who are competent have a set of expectations of others that they are indeed as competent as ourselves. Do your IT management team or board view other people's skills as similar to theirs, and therefore assume that they should be able to use the internet correctly? There is absolutely no harm in reminding people who already know, maybe right from the outset as soon as they join your organisation, or at any other point in time, training people how to use the internet safely and securely. That's really the message. So what is there in terms of resources out there? We mentioned earlier that the HSC didn't have anything on their website, but certainly if you start turning to the SON's top 20 critical controls, number 9 starts talking about security skills assessments and the appropriate training. If you look at 9.4 on the slide, very much validating the awareness levels through periodic testing to see if people will click on suspicious emails. In fact, they absolutely recommend it. Now turning to local governments, don't know if you're aware of the Cyber Essentials scheme or Streetwise, but it's in there. UK government has a lot of papers out there that will assist you as well, and of course come to us for advice. You can see here for smaller businesses what you need to know about cybersecurity and providing simple awareness training. If I look again from UK government, 20 critical areas in reducing cyber risks, again we can see user education, training and awareness. So what do these training options look like? I suppose to start with we could do nothing and just rely on the technology to keep us safe, but if we do this, as we've seen, we've left a large gap in our security. We could do the break room, I suppose, death by PowerPoint, getting everybody in one, take an organisation of 200 people, maybe do 20 at a time, 10 hours a time. We could probably do it over a couple of days. Will it have much impact? The third option you might consider would be a monthly security briefing, probably similar to the option we've just discussed, but maybe a little bit more dynamic. There are some more interesting approaches where we start phishing and testing people ourselves by sending out suspicious email links. Or we go beyond that and we start to test absolutely everyone in the organisation and create a baseline at the beginning of the exercise, because this is an ongoing process which you must keep reinforcing. This has to be a message delivered from the board down, from the top down. This is something that your management team need to buy into and support. So that's really why we're here today. Really to remind you to stop, look and think. Always think before you click. As we mentioned earlier, the Know Before solution is available from us. Kevin Mitnick, the well-known hacker, is in partnership with KnowBe before. He designs a lot of the training programs and is immediately recognisable, at least to many people in the United States, and his branding begins to carry across to the UK nowadays, particularly for those of us who are in the IT sectors. He does seem a lot happier as a white hat as opposed to a black hat, and of course as a white hat he's clearly no longer concerned that the FBI are following him, and of course he's no longer on the FBI's most wanted list in America. It's worth remembering that all of Kevin's initial attacks were carried out by social engineering. If you want to find out more, his book Ghost on the Wire is a pretty good read. Talking more about the Know Before Awareness program, when we run the program we see a large number of people being caught in the first instance. We'd expect that, and we do send out fairly benign emails to create that base level. Over a period of testing and training, that'll pretty much drop off, and indeed over 12 months it becomes mostly your new starters and employees joining the company that create the blips. We've seen this time and time again from an increasingly large data set. The testing and the training works, and this curve absolutely holds true for almost all organisations. That's it in its essence, what we had for you in this particular webinar. If you do have any questions, please do contact us for more information. Thank you.